So we've just got back to the big landscape we were drawing together. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, we've been distanced from each other, so...
Oh my goodness, that whole business where, you got COVID.
Yeah.
And then we were in Norfolk, and then we came back, and all sorts going on, backwards and forwards. We managed to do a little bit, didn't we? Sort of virtually.
Oh yeah, over Zoom.
But it's nice to be back.
It's not really the same, is it though?
No.
It never really has the same kind of feel.
No, it's lovely to be back actually in the same studio, chatting again. And it's, I don't know about you, but I've got really sort of into and quite used to the sort of feel of posting regularly on Patreon, and I really like the feel. I like the way it feels. The just thinking about things.
The daily drawings, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, they've come and gone a bit because there's been just terrible things going on in the world.
Yeah.
Which obviously, I mean, as I sort of draw political cartoons for a national paper, it does rather concentrate my mind. But also, I've been doing daily drawings in for my 5 years sketchbook project.
And there's lots to say at the moment, isn't it?
But it's so depressing, isn't it?
Yeah,
it really does
really, really depressing.
Feel awful. And what those people must be going through in Ukraine.
So sad.
But also the forgotten people in Afghanistan. Just sort of left in this terrible limbo in some ways, or worse than limbo, because they're actually, being persecuted. And the world just feels
I feel
so
like there's just
awful.
so much, isn't there? There's just so much going on at the moment all over the world, really.
And do you realise we're sort of talking in this way as we're drawing our own little landscape, our own world?
There's no war here.
No, please, let's not have war here. This is a kingdom out of time. I said a kingdom. That suggests a sort of, some sort of hierarchy. Maybe it's a...
Well, as long as that volcano doesn't erupt, then...
Yeah, or maybe complex human sacrifices go on, in the surrounding countryside to appease the volcano god. It's already taking a darker turn.
Yeah,
you can see
no.
where my mind is at.
Don't get too morbid, Dad.
So tell me about your the work you're doing at the moment.
Well, at the moment, I have just got briefed for the second Woodland Magic book, which is like a middle grade. Yeah. Well, no, it's younger than middle grade, really, but it's...
Well, it's young middle grade.
Yeah, young middle grade,
So does it have chapters?
Yeah, it does have chapters. Yeah.
Well, then that firmly makes it a middle grade, even if it's quite... The text is quite short.
Yeah, but it's very young,
Yeah.
So I'll be working on that next week.
Yeah.
Just after I figure out the schedule stuff. And that's about it, really. And I want to carry on with the fairy idea thing.
Yes. Now we'll talk a little bit about that, I think, maybe in another segment.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really interesting, this idea of how do you sort of work on a project and start to
your own book.
Bring it together, because it's one of those very, very subjective things where everybody works in a slightly different way. It's just the nature of being creative. You think in a certain way, and certain things strike you as amusing, or you enjoy drawing particular things and not other things. And sometimes you need to sort of seek affirmation, actually go, is this just me?
Yeah.
Am I communicating? And I think that's where, in some ways, editors come in and are incredibly important in this whole process. because a good editor will be your sort of first reader and will be able to sort of give you insights into whether you're communicating the way you want to communicate.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm just struggling now with kind of making a story that's going to be, I don't know, not boring.
That's definitely something to avoid. You don't want to make the story boring. Yes, that's good.
I know, it's hard when I start kind of writing stuff or like thinking of like what can happen, especially because it is going to be quite young. I don't really know like how to make things interesting without it being too complicated, but then without it being too boring. Like they did this and then they did that, and the end. I don't know. It just feels.
Okay, well, I hear you on that. I think the way to avoid that is to always imagine, in a sense, that the story is unfolding, and that there is absolutely no need to fill in all the blanks necessarily. You can say what you want to say, how you want to say it, and that can inform how your story takes shape. And sometimes the worry is that you've got to have this big idea.
Yeah.
It's got, what is happening here and what happens, what's the thing that happens. And sometimes it's not just the thing that happens, it's the way that it happens can be, so the way you put on a coat can be a whole story in itself. Equally, you can decide never ever to describe putting on a coat, because the type of coat it is more interesting. It's invisible, it's a coat of invisibility. Get on with it,
Yeah.
So there are lots of different ways to do it. I think the starting point is to world build, and I think you started that, haven't you? You started world building.
Yeah.
And then the next step after that is to find the voice of the story. And sometimes that's very anecdotal,
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm struggling with.
Yeah, because that's a decision. You've got to make a decision at some point. So I'm going to tell the story this way. It's going to be, dialogue, or I'm going to be a narrator and you're going to hear my voice in it. Or I'm not going to be the narrator. You're never going to hear my voice in it. And once you start to get the feel for that, then plot lines and the structure of the book starts to come together. So in some ways you've got to almost trust in the beginning. Get ready to begin, trust that, and once you begin, take it to a finish before you revise.
Yeah.
Otherwise you'll never get going.
Yeah. If I just keep kind of stopping and thinking, oh, no.
Yeah, no, change all that.
Yeah.
Don't forget at any point of the process that when you get to the end, you can go back and change anything.
Yeah, I think that's what I need to remember, because I keep wanting to tweak too much in the early stages of it, and actually if I just get as much down as possible and finish it, then I can go back and be like, we can change this, or
and it might be useful to think about it in terms of, think the analogy, think of it like a drawing. That what you're doing, first off, this is one way to write a story, in a sense, where you are definitive from that bit to that bit to that bit to that bit, and the whole thing is a finished thing. But the other way you could do it is to take a broad pencil and say there's going to be a volcano there, and there's going to be, and you scribble it all out, and that's your first draft. Is the scribbling.
Yeah.
And sometimes, because you're dealing with language, your tendency is to be precise all the time.
Yeah.
And you don't need to. Sometimes you can just broad brush it, get it all down there.
Yeah.
Then you go back and you get out the dip pen and you do the dialogue and you do a description of this, or you invent a sort of reason for something else. And that's your shading. That's the detail that goes in. And you don't need to think about the detail when you're getting the broad brush stuff.
Yeah.
You're getting a sort of synopsis, a thumbnail, and then you can start to technically make it more finished.
Yeah. Yes, that's true.
It's a curious thing. I'm still not used to writing. I sit down and I get this feeling that I'm doing homework all the time. And
you even write by hand, don't you?
Oh yes, yes, yes. I I can't not have a sort of physical contact with paper, with ink and paper. If I don't have that, I feel up in the air. You know, I feel as if I'm sort of like, oh, I like that. I like what you're doing there. It's lovely.
I feel like with that though, I always have to, the idea of writing by hand, like in a story context, I keep thinking like, well, I want to go back and edit it all the time, which is why I like writing on the computer. But
Because then the editing is seamless, isn't it? It doesn't get all overwritten and crossed out.
How do you do that? You just...
Well, I do by writing in a sort of, you know, a journal or a notebook, and only writing on the facing page.
Oh, I see.
So that the other side, I can add notes. I can put little boxes in and mark areas that I'm going to sort of rework.
Oh, that just seems so complicated to me. I mean, I love handwriting. I journal every day. But that's obviously different.
Well, it doesn't have to be different. There's something really satisfying. The other thing you can do, and this is what I do sometimes as well, is if I don't write in a journal necessarily, I will take out I'll count out the exact number of pages in my story, as you know, foolscap, A4 foolscap paper, and I will then fill those pages, and if and I number those pages, and if a particular page doesn't work, it's too many crossings out, or I need to fix it, I just throw away that page and add a new one in with the same number on, so that in the end I end up with a manuscript with little numbers at the bottom, with my weird writing, my sort of like, because I never handwrite when I'm writing a story, I print.
Yeah, you write in capitals.
I do. I don't know why. It's just feels natural.
Yeah.
It's like I'm doing an enormously long caption. And it just works for me somehow.
I was going to say, whatever works for you, I guess.
Yeah,
you've got to find it.
I once met Muriel Spark, who wrote The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie.
Is that bad? I don't know what that is.
No, it's a wonderful novel if you haven't. There's a very good film adaptation of it with Maggie Smith from the 60s, which is great. And it's about this inspirational Edinburgh schoolmistress who actually turns out to be a fascist. It's great. It's really good. But the Muriel Spark's novel is just fantastic as well. Beautifully written. And she wrote all her novels in a particular brand of notebook with a particular pen that she would buy. So before she started each novel, she would go and buy like a set of notebooks with a particular pen, and that's what she'd do. And that got her into, you know, the zone, the creative zone. And I understand that completely, sort of creativity through stationery.
Yeah, well, there's something nice about buying notebooks, and I mean, I have it with journals. I just like spend a ridiculous amount on like a really fancy journal and pen and just love it. And it just kind of makes the idea of writing in a diary just really nice.
Well, tell me about your journaling. I don't mean, you know, obviously I've snuck...
I really fancy this boy.
Well, obviously I've snuck into your room, Katie, and read all your journals. You know, but I'll never admit to it. You know I'd never do that.
I hate my dad.
He does go on a bit about writing. What I was going to say is that I'm just titivating some clouds here.
I know, I can't, it's, you know, my angle.
Of course,
struggling
you're coming to a weird angle. Let me just sort of come across and let me titivate your cumulus.
Okay.
As the actress said to the bishop.
This is the family's dad.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The whole idea of journals, I think, fascinates me because, again, it's about stationery. When you're writing in your journal, do you ever think about, I mean, who are you writing it for? Do you ever think about that?
No, I mean, I just write it for me.
Yeah.
I don't really write with the intention that people are going to see it.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, they shouldn't see it. You
No,
know, I mean, that's the whole idea. You know,
No, I
otherwise
don't-
it becomes a bit of writing, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's no, it's more just for me. It helps me kind of get things out of my head. If
Yes,
I'm
yes.
like even work stuff or just personal things, and you just
Yeah.
as soon as I write that, it kind of, and I do it every morning with a cup of coffee, and
Yeah.
it's great. And then I feel like I'm ready to start the day, especially if you feel like you've got a lot on your mind, or you're just like planning what you're going to do.
Well, I've got a terrible confession to make, because I do exactly the same, and I have done for years and years and years. So I've got all my journals like on my shelf. Well, you know, because you've seen them.
Yeah, but you want people to read them.
No, I don't care. Is what I'd say to that. I really don't care if someone wants to pick them up because they're not interesting. It's not like they're not. It's not full of dark secrets. You
I've
know.
read some.
Yeah, really not that compelling. But that's not why I do them. And my terrible confession is that I'm not interested in what I'm writing in my journals. I'm interested in the feel of words on a page.
Yeah, no,
So when I go back,
get that.
yeah, the pleasure I get is like turning page after page of handwriting.
Seeing it written.
I don't care what the words say.
Yeah.
And that's why I really choose the pen I use, and I like playing around with, how I write on
Yeah.
each page, and why the journal is so important. The actual physical journal, it's got to be beautiful.
Yeah.
Because that's the pleasure. That's the pleasure I get.
Yeah. No, I completely get that. I like
Oh,
that
good,
too.
good. I thought that I was just being really slightly
No, I mean that's
weird.
why I like to like buy a really nice journal, and like you've got like a nice set of pens, and it just it's about the kind of feel of it and how it looks.
I've done journals where on each page, each facing page, I've done like a drawing. So it's become not anything to do with what I was writing in the journal, just like decoration. And I've done other journals that are just all writing. So and then others where I just do tiny little drawings inset within the sort of. So also just because I'm playing, just because I like to play with it.
Well, I do that in I have a planner as well.
Oh yeah, no, I love a good planner.
Where I just kind of write out what I'm going to do that day, and
To-do
I always
lists.
because I love a to-do list.
Yeah.
And I like setting everything that I'm going to do, and I always doodle on that, like that's kind of surrounded with drawings and
Beautiful,
integrated, and I quite like that.
No, that's great. And actually, weirdly, that not weirdly at all. I keep saying things like weirdly, and I've got a confession to make. This far duller than that. What I mean is, that is a really interesting approach to maybe some creative writing. Is now I'm going to exactly that. I was going to differentiate your shoreline because it's becoming sort of getting too close to the texture of the water, if you see what I mean. I think it's really important to sort of have that technique sometimes in creative writing. You can go, okay, I'll write almost like a journal, and I'll sort of allow room to put little drawings in the middle of my passages of prose. I think is a really interesting thing that we can do as illustrators who write our own material. It's much more of a sort of, you've got to organise it far more if you're.
I don't think anyone can see that down there.
Oh, I see.
Just realised we're drawing down here, and you
Oh yes, you can't actually see it. Oh right, no one's. But let's fill out this bit. Do you want to come in here a little, do a little thing here, and I'm just going to introduce a little bit of.
What do there?
I don't know. I think some habitation.
I feel like you need to.
Nice scratch of the pen on the page. I really like the way this.
I just don't think it's not on the camera.
Oh, this bit I'm doing now.
Not on the
Okay,
camera.
let's
at all.
move over and sort of have a little look. You repositioning the camera so we can get it. Excellent. This is filmmaking at its very best.
Yes, all right, we'll try that.
Good, good. I think this is all part of the homemade ethos of making these little videos, which I've come to rather
homemade.
enjoy.
Well, yeah. Rustic.
But also the chance, I think, to do two things. One is to draw, which is a sort of contemplative, rather nice, meditative thing to do, and to talk.
Yeah.
And not necessarily talk about what we're drawing either. Just sort of talk about other things, which in a sense is what we've been talking about when we've been talking about journaling. It's the doing of it that is interesting, and then the thoughts you have that aren't necessarily to do with what you're doing. I went up to London yesterday for a World Book Day event, and one of the real pleasures I had was the journey there and the journey back, where I just sat and I drew. On the journey there, I drew a tree on top of a hill, one of those.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then on the journey back, I drew a floating island.
I don't know how you manage to draw on trains though.
Well,
It's
that's
so
part of it as
wobbly.
well. I quite like doing that because I can,
Yeah.
and I can go, oh, look, how clever am I? I'm going over the sort of points at Three Bridges and the train is rattling around and I'm still drawing. You see?
Do you remember when you used to do them on brown paper bags and then you used to leave them on the train?
Yes, that was also fun.
Didn't
and
someone find one once and
Yes,
get in
and
contact with
they
you?
did, because I posted it up
Aw.
on I think it was Instagram, and they sent me an Instagram message saying they had my brown paper bag
That's so
and they saw me
funny.
leave it. I love things like that.
Yeah.
Call it a sort of early form of sort of Patreon.
What's going to go on in this bit? Is that
Well,
just sky?
I think, at the moment, I'm going to introduce this. Look, is this on the camera? I'm going to sort of I'm going to do some cumulus clouds coming in. I think the sky, in a sense, is another landscape. I often think that when I'm in Norfolk, in the meadow, and I'm looking up at these great big Norfolk skies, and they're full of sort of the big clouds floating overhead, and it's a whole landscape.
That's amazing.
It's an extra sort of
Especially when there's a great sunset.
Oh, I love that, and that's what I'm looking forward to this summer, is to actually just see the flowers coming up in the meadow and enjoy the
that's so
skies.
nice. Are you ever up for sunrise?
And I want to actually, and you remind me of this, Katie, sort of this summer. I want to spend sort of 24 hours in the meadow.
Didn't you and Mum do that before?
No, we've never managed to do it
you
yet.
You spoke about it.
We've spoken about it.
So the idea is that you go sit in the meadow
Yeah.
from sunrise to sunset.
Yes, so not 24 hours, but on a long summer day, I suppose 40.
Can you get
maybe.
up and leave and go for a wee?
Yes, you can,
Okay.
if you must.
Can you eat? Do you have
yes.
to bring all your snacks with you?
Well, no, I was hoping that
Just a bottle of
possibly,
wine.
like, my daughter would just come with a big picnic hamper at regular intervals and just, like, sort of,
Don't know about that.
take orders for what we might want.
And what will you do? Just sit there and
Yeah.
draw?
Draw.
So you can't go on your phone?
I thought do a bit of drawing, only drawing in only going on the phone in a contemplative way in terms of sort of documenting,
Okay.
So I'm not against that.
Not just...
Not
looking on
scrolling through
social
messages.
media
No,
and-
not or only sort of interacting with what's in front of us.
Yeah.
So if I'm on the phone, I could video the sunset or listen to a sound and capture that in some way.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be scrolling down answering messages.
Okay. And what do you hope to achieve by doing that?
I hope to slow down time.
Slow down time?
Yeah, to actually notice time passing. Notice the length of 5 minutes. Because the world is so fast and frenetic, and things are always cropping up, and before you know it, you know, this is happening, that's happening, and on you're going on to something else. And I want to sit in one place and just see the sort of the world around me unfold in terms of, you know, light and cloud shadow and bird song, and feel the texture of time passing.
God, I wonder what that would feel like though. I wonder if it'd be like frustrating, because that's everyone's wish, isn't it, to kind of slow down and take time.
Yeah.
But then it's also quite hard to do when you do have that privilege to do that. So it is quite hard.
Well, it's interesting. It's almost giving yourself permission to be bored.
Yeah.
You know, this idea that you should be alert and focused and sometimes actually mindfulness is about the opposite of that. It's about going, well, look, just let the time flow over you. You don't have to be doing anything, and you don't have to be necessarily formulating ideas, stratagems, you know, self-help, therapy, any of that. You can just exist for a bit. You know, it's almost like just floating in a sort of flotation tank or something where you're just listening to yourself in a way. Yeah,
that's a nice idea. Very yoga of you, Dad.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, obviously I'm built for yoga, you know that.
And time passing. And
I'm more a yoga bear than I'm anything else. But I do think actually the what we're doing here, for instance, this is, look, it's all, I think we're finished.
Yeah.
Look at that. And what's happening here, it's like just in the middle distance, there's a little sort of almost sunset happening. I'll just add some. But, you know, just creating a drawing that has this time spent on it feels contemplative and it feels nice. And chatting as we do it feels really nice. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you, Katie, for
Thank you, Dad.
this interlude.
Lovely.
It's been great. I'm going to add a little tree there, just my last little tree in the mist.